I am going to attempt to give you guys as much of an overview as I can, but also teach you guys how to find information yourselves and how to track what's going on during a budget session. So with a few things that I wanted to start out with, just total basics. This year is a budget year for Wyoming. That means it is a 4-week session. It's 21 working days, and it's quick and dirty. Sometimes they will see 400, 500 bills in 4 weeks. It goes fast. They did not pass a supplemental budget last year. So first and foremost is getting the budget through. This is how the state runs. This is how agencies run. This is how we have anything that is built around how this state functions. So it is absolutely imperative that they get through the state budget. This also is an election year. So some of the things that you'll start seeing is things that are a little bit grandstanding on topics with budget stuff. So there's a lot that we'll see in 4 weeks. But what I wanted to give you guys is a bit of an overview about how this process works. Because in a general session, that's an 8-week session. That'll be next year. You'll get a lot more sort of broad topic bills that are just sort of like, let's change this law, let's introduce this one. For us with wildlife, you'll get a lot more creative bills. This year, hopefully, I'm going to knock on wood, most of what we get is dealing with money. That's what they should be focusing on. Revenue, how the state runs, how agencies are funded, where money comes from, how we respond to disasters in the state. So with a couple questions out here, raise your hand if you guys have listened in to any committee meeting at any point in the last 10 years. This is good. That table in the back does not count. That's a bunch of lobbyists. So committee meetings. This is where sort of like the lion's share of a lot of the work gets done before they go into session. This is done during the interim. Interim is the word that you'll hear is between sessions. So you'll have interim committee meetings. You'll have the wildlife committee. You'll have joint appropriations, which deals with the budget. You'll have agriculture and public lands committee. There's a lot of different topics that they will sort through. The budget, though, starts in the governor's office, not in the legislature. So the governor pulls together his proposal and his recommendations on how things can run. That starts around October, late September, October, November, usually early December, the budget, or late November, the budget recommendation comes out from the governor. You can find this on the governor's website usually, or you can get sign up to receive the emails from the governor's office, and you'll get a little email that says, hey, this is what he says. You'll get the letter. So basically his stance and why he's asking for what he's asking and his priorities, things that he thinks are really, really important for this state. This year, what came out was a set of priorities that's very focused on wildfire recovery. Wyoming is one of 5 states in the rest of the U.S., only one of 5 that does not have a disaster relief program. We don't have that, and we've just lost most of the federal funding for it. Big uh-oh for us if we have a big wildfire. So there's a lot of effort being put from the governor's office to start getting funding for wildfire disaster, for cheatgrass mitigation, for invasive grasses. This is something when we talk conservation, we perk up and we hear, invasive grasses, very important to forage for wild game, very important for the ag community, very important for the state of Wyoming, so we're not Nevada in 10 years. So some of the places that you can go look, it's going to be the budget department. And I had to actually ask, because usually I just Google Wyoming budget department to find this. Apparently you can get to it from one of the state websites, but I'm not going to take you through that wormhole. Just Google it. It'll be one of the first ones that come up. And you can click Wyoming budget department, go through, scroll down, state agency budgets, reports, and other information. Already wonky, right, guys? Super easy to understand. Just wait till you see this. The Wyoming State Budget Book. Let's see, does it give you the page count on this one? 126 pages. Downloading. So how do you sort through that? Well, I can give you a couple cheat codes. Every agency has its own number. So there's a lot of agencies that I will say that I've never looked at nor paid attention to because that is not in my job description. Most of the ones that we pay attention to are things like the Game and Fish budgets, Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust, the Department of Agriculture budget, among other things. To give you a cheat code here, WWNRT. Can I have a show of hands? Who knows what WWNRT is? Okay, I'll give you a little rundown. WWNRT, Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust Fund. It is a $200 million trust fund that it sits and it accrues interest and it runs off of the interest, and grants are given out of it for private or state land habitat work. This can be anything from, rebuilding beaver dam analogs on private land, helping with wildfire and grasses mitigation. They helped the tribes and gave a grant to the tribes in the last couple of years to help deal with the feral horse problems. They do a lot of really good work. And they get about 8 to 9, sometimes $11 million every single year that goes out for habitat work. This is a budget that we are very, 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 very interested in. And it took us until 2023 budget year to get this account fully funded at $200 million. It was made in 2005. It took nearly 20 years to get it fully funded, and we did get it. But now we have to keep using it and keep doing the good work with that. So agency number 39, a lot easier to find, is WWNRT. When you get into that, if you guys can see, here's all the numbers. You can get to 39 right here. Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust. The reason I'm telling you this is there's a huge ask this year in this one section. We're asking for $40 million outside of the $200 million. So $40 million for the wildfire recovery work. This is for pre-work and what I would say it's mitigation for invasive grasses, and it's recovery. So that after the house straw fire and all of these fires that we've had, the elk fire, the house straw fire, and a few others, rather than cheatgrass coming in, we need at least 2 years of funding to make sure that we can plant the right things and keep the cheatgrass out. Invasive grasses funding is super, super, super important. But the other challenging part of this is it's not 1 year funding, because you could give all the money in 1 year, but what happens to the seed bank the next year? It's still going to be there. So invasive grasses work needs to be done in at least 3-year increments. So big ask. The temperament of this legislature is not to give money. The temperament of this legislature is to cut everywhere. And so this is one, and the reason that I'm here talking now, this is if there's one ask that you as a conservationist in this state can make that will be powerful to your legislator in the corner. It is, and he's already great on this, it is to support this ask within this budget and to make sure that we get that full funding. Other agencies, why don't we see a bunch about the Game and Fish budget? Does anybody know? Not you guys back there. Sit down. They have their own. Our state game agency takes $0 from the general fund. It is entirely run by hunting licenses, Pittman Robertson dollars. Who knows what that is? Anybody knows what Pittman Robertson is? Pittman Robertson is an 11% excise tax on industry of all firearms and ammunition in the country. 11%. You don't see it on your receipt. The industry takes that on. But each state, our state, gets anywhere from $20 to $22 million a year. Arguably in Democratic administrations, that goes up because the gun sales go up. But 20 to 22 million for habitat work, for research, and for things like that. That's a large part of our game and fish budget. About, I think it's 49% of our budget is funded by hunting licenses. 80% of that 49% is funded by non-resident hunting licenses. And And then the rest are different federal grants and things like that. So no general fund dollars, which is why you don't hear the Game and Fish fought about on the House floor or the Senate floor during budget sessions as much. The reason I'm telling you this right now, though, is that when we don't see a resident fee increase in the last 20 years, and we keep asking Game and Fish to do more, to do habitat work for mule deer, to keep doing work on wildlife crossings, to work on migration corridors, to deal with what's going on with sage grouse, to do all of this, and we never raise resident fees, we're going to start losing the programs that are putting wildlife back on the landscape for us. And I'm prepping you here because at some point we're going to have a discussion about the Game and Fish budget, and we're going to have to find creative ways to grow it. And that might mean a $5 to $10 increase in resident fees. But if you want wildlife like we have now, they haven't even had the ability to adjust for inflation. Imagine if you were paid today what you were paid 20 years ago and asked to do 4 times more. That is what they are dealing with right now. So the budget discussion is important. Other bills that come up usually are dealing with revenue stuff. There's a bunch of property tax discussions happening right now. So you have one of the Game and Fish ones. Did you guys know that the Game and Fish is the only agency that has to pay property tax to the state? They're a state agency that pays property tax to the state. But they are run by all $100. So the hunters are paying for the Game and Fish to then turn around and pay the state again for property tax. Now, some of that makes sense. The reason they did that originally was because they're landowners in some ways, and they're not asking to not pay on like the big ag land that they are dealing with, whether it's like feed grounds or different things like that. But the buildings that are public, whether that's the warden housing that is open 24/7 to all of you, no matter what problem you have with wildlife, they answer the phone kind of thing, or the big field offices or the headquarters in Cheyenne, they all pay property tax on that. And so there's a bill, thankfully, to cut this for them. It will free up anywhere from $2 to $3 million, which is awesome, in a budget that's probably going to be about 10 to 15 short in the next couple of years. So we're looking for money to put on the ground. I'm looking at resident fee increases. I'm going to say it. I'm going to probably get crucified at some point, but I'm going to say it. We're going to have to see it. We're looking at property tax. We're looking at how we can do more with less. So we now have a governor's budget with a $40 million ask on invasive grasses work, which is great because that's proactive. We're not Nevada. Nevada will never get back its grasslands. It's so far gone. We can. We are just on the tipping point on where if we can catch it and we can put the money in, we can save some of our large-scale grasslands. We can keep a lot of the winter forage and the summer ranges for a lot of these animals well. And it's also what's going to keep agriculture going. So this is like one place where hunters and landowners get to work together. It's rare, but we get to. So looking at the budget, now you're like, great, I know this is happening. How the hell do I track it? Because the budget bill is not out this year. So what happened, or not out yet this year, governor puts his recommendation. The Joint Appropriations Committee then spends basically all of December and a large portion of January working through the governor's recommendations. So this Appropriations Committee is a joint committee. There's House members and Senate members on it. They sit and they sort of have each agency come forward. This agency gets to sit in front of them, give it their best pitch, why they're asking what they're asking for, and why JAC, Joint Appropriations Committee, should give it to them. Then they get to work the bill. They get to say yes, no. They get to ask questions. They get to say, no, I've never heard of cheatgrass before. That's horrible. They could say, there was a quote, all of the elk are bringing the cheatgrass in. That was an interesting one. But you hear the discussion, and then you have the agency there to answer all of these questions. They are still in this process right now. We're meeting today, they'll meet through the week, and they'll meet next week as well. So you can watch these on the website, which I will show you how to get to in a little bit. So they work through this all. Then it goes into actual legislative session. This is where you see it's 2 bills. You'll hear the Senate bill, and it'll be like SF0001, so Senate File 1, and House Bill 1. and they will work it consecutively on either side. So the Senate will work that bill, and what they start with is the same text on both sides. Senate starts with the same text as the House starts with. Then the House will work it, and it will go just like a normal bill. It'll go through 3 floor votes and committee meetings and have amendments added, sometimes many amendments added. I think we've seen up to 53 amendments added. And then you have the Senate doing the same thing. So the Senate introduces it, they work it through a bunch of votes, and then you have 2 bills that come out either side. How many of you guys think those bills look exactly the same after that? So then what happens is they go into something called conference, and they take both of those, and it's sort of like, may the best man win. We're all, I think, hoping for a UFC fight at this point, but mostly they sit down, put their heads together, and try and come up with a compromise. What happened last year, they did not reach a compromise and actually failed the bill, and we did not get a supplemental budget. That cannot happen this year. So there's going to be a lot of give and take. There's a lot of Ogden opinions. There's a lot of grandstanding because it's an election year. There is going to be a lot that you see. So what I'm going to tell you is what comes out in the press, double check. Do your own research as well. Read what they set out, read what organizations put out, but also know how to go find the work yourself. Because an educated citizenry is a citizenry that's going to have a state that runs better, because they will listen to you. If you call them and you talk to them, you say, I'm really concerned about cheatgrass in Wyoming. I'm concerned about property taxes. I'm concerned about what's happening with education and healthcare. Every single one of these legislators are there because in some form, in some way, they care about Wyoming. They will listen to you if you come to them in good faith, but do a little research before you do that so you know what you're talking about. So the Wyoming legislative website, actually very straightforward, and recently just heard is one of the better ones. What you can see here is like what's going on right now, which is the Joint Appropriations Committee agency budget hearings. That's happening as we're talking. Where you would go, legislation, right here, session information, and this is where you're going to get your list of all of the bills. Every bill that is going to go through will be listed here. This is how many draft bills we have, and we're 3 weeks, 4 weeks out from session already. As you can see, House Bill 1 is not up yet. They have not fully drafted it because they are in the committee meetings right now. So what I am going to pull up is a budget bill from 2024. So House Bill 1, or if you go down through all of the House bills, this might take a month. There we go. So let's say in a 4-week session last year, the House heard 221 bills. Then you have the resolutions and the Senate file, SF1. So that's the Senate's bill. So they'll have both, and you can see how both are moving through. The Senate went through in 2024 budget session 132 bills in 4 weeks. Good work really happens when you only have 14 minutes to look at a bill. So if you go to the House bill, click on that. It'll take it a second. You'll see, to view this bill, please see the bill versions, the resources section located to the right. It's because this is a beast of a bill. It's long. Where you go over here, bill versions and resources, I'm going to tell you what these mean. Introduced, that is the bill that they come to the floor with on the first reading. That bill is as it came out of committee. This is what they start with. This is your sort of step 1. Enrolled, you'll see another word in here. You'll see engrossed, and then you'll see enrolled. Enrolled is that bill once it passed and has been signed by the governor. So you can click on the introduced, and it'll be a different text than what you see in the enrolled bill. The word that's missing in here that you'll see during a regular session is engrossed. Engrossed is what that bill looks like most of the time with all of the amendments into it. You do not have to scroll through 126 pages to find the amendments. There's other easier ways to do it, but it's a little wonky as well. Digest is what's going to tell you basically all of the proceedings and what happened with that. You can look at it up here, and it'll tell you who voted and how. It'll tell you, the A's and nays. So you get to see, you can look and see how your legislator voted, and you can say thank you, always say thank you, or you can yell at them if you need to. But you can see all of the proceedings for that bill. Obviously, the budget bill's very long. Then you go to the amendments tab. This is where you find as things start coming up. And this is where you're going to start losing your mind a little bit because it happens quickly. Sometimes budget amendments come up 45 minutes before they're heard on the floor. You don't get a ton of time to do a lot of work with them. And sometimes they're sneaky, sometimes they're well-meaning, but this is a place, if you're going to track it, to track it. I cannot tell you how many times I bet you myself, Monica, and Era have worn out the refresh button on our computers waiting for the amendments to drop. But you can see them all here. And this is where it starts getting confusing. So you'll see an amendment to the section. That's telling you, remember how I told you every agency, everything has a number? That section's going to tell you what agency and what number they're talking about. And you kind of just have to watch and start reading what they're at. Let me see if I can find a WWNRT one. I bet you I can find it. Who would have that? Do you guys remember what the WWNRT amendment was? 2 years ago. Yeah. Let's see. Larson. Oh, so close. Lloyd. In all, how many bills do you have memorized?
I don't even do numbers.
Well, this is where you're going to find them, and you're going to see second and third reading. So again, this is like the first reading of the budget bill is pretty much where they get to hear everything, and different committees and different, Joint Appropriations Committee stands up and basically has to defend their decisions with this budget bill. So they'll be on the House floor and they'll be, getting questions from other senators or other representatives. And they're saying, no, here's the thought process. This is what we heard in testimony. This is why we're going to cut it, or this is why we're adding some stuff. We don't have it here. You have to think we only have so much money. So they do have to balance the budget. They have to, money doesn't fall from the sky. So if you pull money from someplace, it doesn't just come out of the ether. It has to come from a program and go somewhere else, or come from a different pot of money and go somewhere else. So it's a bit of a juggling act. And the people that have done the budgets a long time, Representative Larson has been a wizard on the budget for a long time. They know how finessed this has to be. And it's never perfect. First reading's never perfect, but it's where they get to defend what's going on. Then you have second reading. This is where you start getting amendments. And this is where you get people that start grandstanding. As you heard, there was a couple years ago, there was an amendment to completely strike WWNRT entirely, even though it's in a trust fund. It's like actually not strikeable. It's, so they'll get them and they'll be like, well, I just don't like conservation easements, so I want to get rid of this agency entirely. Which is a really fun argument to have in 45 minutes with about 30 senators. So this kind of stuff happens fast. And it happens quick, and it doesn't always make sense. But you can always go back to this website and sort of make sense of it as you go through it. And they will not put all of these amendments up, the night before. This is where you just you hit refresh, you're like, oh shoot, there's 15 more, great. And then you kind of go through them and you sort out, once you start learning the section numbers, you're like, well, I don't, it's my job. I'm like, well, I don't care about Department of Health. I'm just looking for 39. If you are a citizen, you should care about the Department of Health. And you can find them underneath all of this. If you are on other pieces of legislation, I'll go back to the 2026. So what you're seeing here now is individual bills. So committee sponsored, So outside of the budget bill, committee-sponsored bills, so like the Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife Committee, or the Agriculture and Public Lands and Waters Committee, or any of the other select federal natural resource committee, education, the labor committee, they're all going to have judiciary, their bills down here. When it says just like judiciary, agriculture, wildlife, or travel, those are committee bills. Then you're going to see individual ones, and you'll start seeing names. So in a House bill, that's a House representative that has dropped that and sponsored that bill. When you're down in the Senate bills, it'll be one of the Senate files. One of the asides, if you see HJ, so HB, House bill, SF, Senate file, HJ, House joint resolution, different piece of legislation. A resolution doesn't have teeth so much as it is basically a letter from the legislature to the world about their stances and feelings on things. Sometimes this can be really good. Sometimes it can be anti-public lands, which we saw last year. On the Senate side, there was a Senate joint resolution, so an SJ, that was basically saying that the state should get rid of all of our public lands within our borders. Thank you for your vote on that, Senator.
And a joint resolution can also be a constitutional amendment. Pay attention this year.
Yes, pay attention to the constitutional amendment discussion this year. That is a good note. Not something I can work on with wildlife, but something that if you're a woman in this room, you probably should watch. Yeah. Let's see. Any questions so far? About process, about who to talk to, about who to yell at, who to say thank you. The one thing I want to tell you guys, you will get yourself nowhere with anger. You will get yourself very far with respectful passion. We're all mad about something, I think, this year in one way or another. But when you're reaching out and talking to a human, they will not listen to you if you come at them with anger. They will listen to you if you come at them with respectful passion. And there's things of like saying, Senator Case, he has a title. You want to use that. You want to say thank you. If you are not getting anywhere with them, you can also say we can respectfully agree to disagree. Do not burn that bridge, because at some point you may need something from them and you don't want them to hang up on you when you call the next time. Do not burn a bridge over a single topic, but be passionate, reach out. They actually respond to texts really, really, really well. Emails says, please vote no, constituent concern. They're going to click on that because they go, oh, it's one of my voters. They're going to click on that and go, oh, and then they have, 2 to 5 sentences, probably 2 to 3 sentences. Tell them what you want in a concise phrase. Tell them why it matters to you. Tell them thank you for their work. Give them something to get back to you if I have more questions or need to get in touch. Send a couple of those. And if you don't hear back, send another one. It's okay to bug them a bit. They get hundreds of emails a day. You may just get lost in the line. And if you don't ever hear anything, pick up the phone and call. Send a text message, which leads me to the next part. When you're down at the bottom, so you have calendars, committees, legislation, legislators. If you do not know who your legislator is, you can use the Find My Legislator button. If you do know, you can click on, and I'm gonna throw Kale under the bus a little bit. Click on there. Find his name, and you will get the information, the committees that he sits and does work on, the bills that he is sponsoring that year, and under the contact me, he has a phone number and an email. This is where you find them, and you can find all of them in this way. But again, you guys, respectfulness gets you a lot further, but also so does concise. No one is going to read a 4-page email that is ranted off late at night after a half bottle of wine. Just don't send it. If you want to attach more information, put it in a PDF and attach it to the email so they can click it. Do not just send it in a big, rant. No rants. Kind, respectful, strong. Relate it back to yourself. Reach out first to your senator or your representative because your vote matters the most to them. But then if there's committee-sponsored bills, you can reach out to the chairman and to the other members of the committee. Now, how do you find that? Again, go down to the bottom, click on the committees. This will give you all of the information. Joint and standing. This is the list of committees that our legislature has. Travel, recreation, wildlife, and cultural resources. For those of us hunters and wildlife folks in the room, this is one of the really important committees. You can click on that. You can see when their meetings are going to be. And then you click on members. Here again, you have all of the information. It'll tell you the chairman, which if you have an issue with a committee bill, those are the first two people to talk to if your personal legislator is not on that committee. And again, just click on their name. It'll take you to their page, and you can go right to contact me. Chairman Andrew Byron is a gem. He loves to respond to stuff. He listens to a lot of folks that call. So these are good people that will respond. Joint and standing, let's see, Agriculture Committee, less responsive to people. But again, you can click and find all of the members. Do you guys know how many legislators we have? Oh, sit down, you guys. Era, how many do we have?
There are 62 in the House and 31 in the Senate for a total
93 for the whole state of Wyoming. What's really cool is our senators and representatives show up. They're people you can grab a coffee with. They're people you can talk to. And it's not like that in every state. The access that we have here in Wyoming is really, really, really good. And I have seen votes change on the floor because a constituent picked up a phone and called their representative. In fact, I watched Lloyd Larson change a vote on the floor because one of his constituents called and said, "Hey, have you thought about this? I'm really concerned about this." And I literally watched him during the vote stand up and switch his vote after getting that. So they are responsive, and one voice matters here. A lot of our elections were won and lost by under 100 votes. Imagine what that means if you put on your tennis shoes and knock doors for the people that you support and that do work for you and that are your voice. If everyone in this room did that, our elections would be different. 18% of Wyoming voted in the primary. 18%. That is not enough for a state where the elections are decided in the primary. That's shameful. And if we're not getting other people to the polls, this is like my pitch of your vote counts. They listen. 27% voted in the general. That's still abysmal. We can do better and we can get other people there, but we have to get them out and vote. Because if we're mad about the budget or we're mad about the bills going through and we've not brought ourselves to the polls, or you know what, you guys, if you don't like your representative and they're not representing you, all of you are just as qualified as them. Run against them. Make them have this discussion. This is something that's really important because we have a lot of seats that they're uncontested. That's important. We need to have discussion in democracy. Democracy does well with constructive criticism. But that only happens if we have people to talk to and to debate with. It should be okay that we have differing opinions. Do not vote on things because they're single issue stuff. Find the person that represents you the best, that is a kind human that will listen to you. And if you end up disagreeing with them, find someone you respect to disagree with. Because if we just vote no because, we don't like them on that one issue, we're going to end up with a very one-sided position across the board. And diversity and nuance is important. There is a question here.
Is Lloyd going to be running this year?
That is a question for Representative Larson.
Well,
Tell Representative Larson to run because I don't know.
And I will just say that nobody hears Bill when Taylor is concerned about primary. As a Democrat, I went out and canvassed for him. does matter.
It matters hugely.
One thing you might up though, you were accurate about the primary. I'm sorry it's like that, but that is truth. Very low attendance, one side the party dominance, that's we both full switch. And no full swear. The problem with the primary, which occurs in August, is you have to register for that primary now on May 1st.
If you guys didn't hear that, register for the primaries on before May 1st. Before May 1st.
That means register for the right party to vote.
Register and choose a part. Yeah. Oh. I'm sorry it's that way. I hate that. But it's, if you're going to vote in August, you have to register and vote for a bit.
If you're a new Wyoming resident, how do you register to vote?
Wow, it's been a long time. I think just go to the courthouse and they'll do it. Yeah.
Slow the base. Julie's great.
Is there other questions? I'm happy to talk about bills, things that you've heard, other questions. And I also, before I go into that, I want to pitch over to Era because I know one thing we're probably all have heard about is property tax. Now, as a wildlife lobbyist, that is not something I track until the game and fish is involved. But Era has been.
Jesse, just one thing. Could you explain what citizen legislature is? You were talking about how we need to be nice to our legislators, not be important. People understand.
Yes. The question here is, what is a citizen legislature and why does it matter? Our state has a citizen legislature. What does this mean? It means they don't get paid. They have day jobs. They have other lives. They have other things going on. They get some per diem to absorb some of the cost. I doubt it's enough to actually absorb the full cost of spending 4 to 8 weeks down at session, as well as however many weeks they end up on the road for interim committee meetings. But a citizen legislature is just that. They are citizens. When I say that you all here are just as qualified to run as they are, I mean it that way. Citizen legislature. They're not paid. They have very light staff, if they have staff at all. The state has the Legislative Services Office, which has attorneys and staff that help write the bills. But unlike when you say call Senator Barrasso, Lummis, or Congresswoman Hageman's office and you get a whole list of staff working on different things, they don't have that. Now, the California legislature does have something like that. We do not. Why is this important? Any guess? Because who is the expert on wildlife between the hunter and the wildlife advocate making the phone call to the legislator? Who's the expert? The hunter. You are. If you have a depth of knowledge on something, you tend to know more than they do, which is, again, goes back to the kindness. You're not lecturing them. You're having a discussion. You're enlightening them. You're telling them why it should matter. A lot of times, I think only 6 people in this entire House side even get hunting licenses. So when we're talking about license problems in Wyoming, which has the most confusing license system possible, they really don't actually know because they've never utilized it. And so you are the expert there. This is why I keep saying your voice matters. Reaching out matters. They listen because they don't know, and they know what they don't know. But if you don't reach out, they either vote whichever way their neighbor tells them to vote, or they vote whichever way the strongest voice that claims they're a hunter in their votes, or they vote whichever way I strong arm them into voting. But they want to connect with you. These are people that deeply care about our state, but they can't know everything and they don't have staff. So you guys are the experts here. This is where a citizen legislature shines. And it's because you can reach out to them and have that makes sense. But it only works if you reach out. And if you're silent, the system fails.
Let's give a huge round of applause. Everything that she just guided you through takes a lot of things, a lot of time, things to learn. It's okay if you didn't commit it all to memory because you have Jess, and you should sign up for You should sign up for the WWF email alerts for the legislature. Go to Candle of the Capitol if you can. Jess is going to help keep you on top of all the things that matter. and spend some time on this page exploring, because there may be things beyond wildlife and public lands that matter to you. So, quick couple other things on the budget, just bigger picture philosophical things that we're seeing this year. The federal government is not sending as much money to states. So a big question is, what are we going to do about that? A significant portion of our budget comes from the federal government. Most of our legislators won't tell you that, but if you look in the budget, it is very clear that significant portions, sometimes even the majority for certain agencies, comes to the federal government. What are we going to do when that money is not there? Are we going to cut the services? Are we not going to do those things? Or are we going to fund that ourselves? Another philosophical question is, are we going to save for a rainy day? We have a massive sovereign wealth fund as a state as a result of taxes from the mineral industry when times were booming. Their folks were wise enough to store that away. And the interest, the revenue on those funds, is actually what I guess maybe the most significant source of funding we have right now. It's really property tax, mineral revenue, and then this investment income, which was mineral revenue at one point, and then with that, the federal funds. So do we save for a rainy day, or do we say, hey, let's spend it all now? Do we withdraw? So that's a philosophical question you'll see as well. Really along, I guess it's not party lines, but maybe within party lines, there's a big, within the Republican Party, that's really safe to say, there's a big dispute there. And then what does it look like for to be a Wyoming problem versus a problem that we're trying to bring attention to nationally or import for somewhere else is a big philosophical problem. As is staffing. As we don't give raises as often as our state employees might like, other industries are more competitive and it's hard to fully staff agencies. Staffing and technology have been some of the big asks at the budget hearings for the Appropriations Committee. And let me tell you, these agencies are pretty scared to make asks right now because they've been told by a select few that they're going to get doged. And so there's a lot going on philosophically beyond some of the wildlife pieces, and those are the broader strokes. Going along with that is property taxes. So there are already, Senator Case, is it 8 property tax bills? 7, a bunch. Thank you, Senator Case, for your votes. He consistently voted no. So before we get to bills that are coming up for property taxes, 2 things. 1, why do property taxes impact you? Well, because if you own property, you pay them. And if you're a renter, you pay them also. Just not directly to the state, but they fund our public services. They fund our schools, they fund the roads, the fire departments, all of those pieces that really impact us at the city, at the county level. That's where our property taxes go. It's not a state-funded thing. They don't go to state agencies or stuff like that. Last year, and the year before, there were a bunch of property tax cuts already passed, including a 25% cut, which, if you've looked at the news in the past year, is already impacting local services. There's libraries that may need to close. There's police departments, fire departments that are like, oh, what are we going to do? I don't know if we can replace equipment, hire stuff. So it's already having an impact, and folks have already seen decreases in their property tax bills. We do have a program as a state for those who cannot afford to pay their property taxes to apply for help in paying their property tax bill. And the legislature has put more money towards that, and the governor has recommended in his budget recommendation more money towards that as well. So where does that leave us? Next November, there will be a ballot initiative that is already, we know it's going to be on the ballot because it got the number of signatures needed to make it onto the ballot. It didn't have to go to the legislature. There will be a ballot initiative to cut residential property. Is it all property tax or residential? I'm blanking right now. Either way, to cut property taxes by 50%. Can you imagine if your roads get plowed 50% less? There's 50% more potholes. The ambulance takes 50% longer to get there. All of those different things. So lots of things can happen. There's a 50% cut. So that's already happening. Doesn't matter what the legislature does. That's there. Other things that are happening that are bills that are moving forward in the legislature are a elimination of residential property tax. There are other classes of property tax, but this is specifically residential. And it's proposing another possible constitutional amendment to do that. A partner bill with that would increase sales tax. So basically on anything you're purchasing, probably like not all supermarket foods, but a lot of just about everything else, it would increase sales tax by 2%. First off, the math doesn't add up. That is not zeroing out residential property tax is more money than the 2%. They could change the percentage. But there's a big philosophical question there in terms of who pays a regressive tax, which was what a sales tax is, versus tax on folks who would potentially have more assets, which is what a property tax is. Other things, they've removed the sunset on some of the property tax exemptions that are already in place. There's a long-term homeowners property tax bill. Of a certain age, owned your house for long enough, you get lower taxes automatically. There's also another one to make us just like California, somewhat ironically, and that is to create an acquisition property tax system. And so rather than getting taxed on the value of your house, the true market value, which by the way, we don't actually get taxed on that. They calculate the fair market value. And then we only get taxed on like 8.5% of that for residential property tax. So we already get like a pretty significant discount on our property taxes. I know it doesn't feel like that when you write the check, but just in terms of the math. And so acquisition property value would mean that the value that you are taxed on with your property is that with which you bought it. So if you bought a house in the 80s, if you can prove that price, that's what it would get taxed on. They do have a formula if you don't, for sort of setting a baseline, and then it's really going forward from that point. That does a couple things, as we've seen from California, that gets folks to stay in their houses for a long time rather than maybe downsizing once kids are out of the house. Creates a lot of challenges for folks who are looking to get into the housing market, as well as decreasing property tax burdens overall. We normally don't like being like California, but this bill is like California are us. And some of the amendments that were proposed were like straight out of the California playbook, which was fascinating to watch. Let's see, there's another one that wants to have us give the legislature permission to basically decide, how do we want to tax property tax? Do we want to do it on acquisition value? Do we want to do it on something else? Let's make up a way. But it gives that power away more directly to the legislature. I feel like I'm missing one. Looking to Senator Case, who was there for much of that. The gist is there, though. The gist is multiple ways to decrease property tax, which who doesn't like paying less of a bill, but think about whatever services that means and what is the right balance there for folks, given that we already have some ways to decrease those taxes for those who can't afford it. This is a really good time now, before everyone moves to Cheyenne in February, to tell the legislators what's important to you. Their email boxes and voicemails are much less full right now. And it doesn't have to be about a certain bill. If there's something that's important to you, just in case it ends up in a bill, you could tell them now. Take them out for a beverage of their choosing, whatever excuse. Let them know it's important, because your vote does matter and your voice does matter. And that's one of the amazing things about being in Wyoming.
And I would say one of the last pieces is that in a budget session, 2/3 vote to get introduced. So in a general session, you just need the simple majority. You just need half plus one. 2/3 vote. So it has a steep introduction rate. So you'll see a lot of bills, but you'll also see in that first week or two, you'll see the slaughtering of many. A lot of times they just run out of time and they can't even get to the bills that they have logged. The other thing I would say is if you see bills and one that you really, really like and it doesn't even get heard, still worth reaching out to your legislator on, because a lot of times they're floating bills in a budget session to kind of tease the idea out there. They're kind of knowing that there may not be enough time to flesh it out and everything like that. But if it's a bill you like, or if it's a bill you hate, one, you might see it die and it will come back next year. And I think we'll see that with a lot of bills. So do not get disheartened. Still stay involved. Legislation takes time. You guys, if legislation passes fast, be really, really, really concerned that they didn't spend enough time actually looking at what it does. There's a lot of unintended consequences. It's a big web, and if you pull on one little string, it creates holes, places we don't even know. And so passing legislation in the drop of a hat is hard. It needs to be hard. It goes through nearly 11 different discussions and votes before it hits the governor's desk. If it doesn't make it through all 11, it probably didn't make it for a reason and needs to be fleshed out more. Or there's a bias against it, and we also need to work on the voice of what the bill is doing. But I just don't want you to get disheartened. Legislation should take time. It should be complicated. And it's better if you're involved. And it will pass better if you're involved.
Can you recap us on what's happening with the Buck Springs land management?
No. No, I cannot tell you what's happening with the Rock Springs management plan because that is absolutely not my job. My colleague Nat Patterson, he is the contact for WWF who is doing the work on that. He is in the trenches, and I can tell you he knows a lot more than I do. And I am just not the person to speak on it well.
I just want to say something about what Hera said, which is so fascinating. For the tax system, property tax system is so complex. And Tara Bird, our county assessor, has taken the time to really work through helping people understand it. She is always there for you. But she put together the Legalman Butters, an awesome PowerPoint explaining where all those dollars come from, where they go to, the impact of different things. Take the time, and that will really help you understand what's up with essence.
Yeah, you guys looking for resources on legislative stuff. Every NGO that plays in the legislative arena is amassing education right now. Our website has things on the transferable landowner tags. Our website will have things on this budget amendment ask when we know exactly what is in it. The orgs that are down there and tracking this, don't just go for one. Sign up for all of ours because, I cover wildlife and conservation and hunting stuff, but I'm not covering property tax or other things. I'm not covering, everything else that's going on. So find the orgs that sort of are playing down in there. Even if you don't agree with them, their emails will clue you in. Sign up for those emails. And if they help, for the love of God, donate to them. NGOs only work when we have membership that donates. If you want more information, Camo at the Capitol is where you can come down. I will teach how a bill becomes law. I will give you a rundown of every single significant bill touching wildlife, hunting, conservation, water, any public lands. We'll do a full rundown of that. You'll have a discussion with the Game and Fish director, which is always really special. We're going to do a in-depth how to read and track the budget bill, and we'll have the budget bill at that point so we can actually go through it. And then we will take you into the Capitol, and you get to sit in a committee meeting and comment on a committee meeting. And I've worked with the chairman. He's going to pull up a bill that is relevant to hunters for that day, which is awesome if he can. And you'll get to comment at a committee meeting if you want to do that. And then we'll take you and introduce you to the House and the Senate. I'm really hoping Senator Case over there might introduce us this year. And then we'll break into small groups, and a lot of the lobbyist ladies, at least Era over there, since we're getting ditched by Monica wherever she is, will help take you around and pull your representative out or one of the representatives that's relevant to the bill you want to talk about and be there with you to have this discussion with them. And then we take you to the Sportsman's legislative reception where we serve you a bunch of wild game. There's an open bar. The governor's there. Bob Budd with WWNRT is there. And you get to sort of continue the conversation that you started in the Capitol with the legislator over a beer and maybe a elk burger instead of over hard tile. And a Push Root beer. That's a big thing. Push Root's donating the beer this year for a Camo at the Capitol. If there's other questions, I was going to pull up if you guys wanted to see like a quick example of what these budget hearings look like. You'll notice how the room is just absolutely packed with people.
Jesse, you need to mention how we offer modalities for the camo people. Don't do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also with me is Mark Wallace, who's our official
This is Bob Budd of WWNRT.
Department of Administration and Information. Barb was here for that part questions. I defer again, and then also Hillary Wassey with her transmission. So we do have to be fire agency. I appreciate your spam control. Yes. I presume we'll just walk through this the same as you've been doing with the others. Our exceptions are listed on page 8. There are 5. I will not go into the TRP as we just.
Okay, right. Mr. Beth, good to see you. Is there any effort? I know I'll just use our place as an example. We never had cheatgrass, ever. And then as the big elk herds moved in on us to winter and stuff, you could see, right, we would see the trail for the next year was cheatgrass trails. It was the animals brought that in. Is there any effort? I guess my question is, any effort to see where?
So I'm going to stop that because you guys can go watch this entire thing. This is the Joint Appropriations Committee. This is on December 9th. And they were going through WWNRT's budget. And they go line by line, and they have legislators that can ask questions. They can make anecdotal stories. They can do whatever they need to get that information so that when they then go to the floor, they have an ability to either defend the decisions that they make during this committee meeting. You can watch all of these. These are logged on. The way that you find them is going back to that website. Here's the homepage. Go to legislative meetings. It's January right now. This one was December. So I hit the back button and Appropriations Committee, Joint Appropriations Committee. And you can have the dates here. The reason I knew WWNRT was on the 9th is because I was supposed to be there and I was not. But you can click on details, hit the agenda, and it'll tell you all the way down sort of what's being said. So you see Tuesday, December 9th at 10:15, WWNRT was up. And then you can go over to meeting materials, and there you can get all of the materials that the Joint Appropriations Committee has at their fingertips for these discussions. So this is where you track and find everything that they have. It's all there. And it's a relatively easy website, as wonky as it sounds, to navigate.